Let's go back out to that breaking news in Pinellas County. Sheriff talking about the firing of a school resource deputy for the way he handled a child who has autism. You can see Sheriff Bob Gualtieri there at the podium right now. I do believe he's just waiting to get started now.
And we're also hearing that the sheriff may be updating an active death investigation going on right now. So kind of two things we're expecting updates on. He just got set there at the podium, not long ago. So, a chance he's waiting for some mic checks, some people around him, some sound to get set up. But again, it looks like he's about to start right now. He's giving the nod. Let's listen.
All right. The first matter we're going to talk about is the termination today of Deputy Earl Darling. Deputy Darling was hired by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office in 1995. He's been here for 22 years, and for the last 17 years, he was the school resource officer at Osceola Middle School. This case involves a 13-year-old boy who has autism spectrum disorder. And he began at Osceola Middle School last school year, so about a year ago now. And he was in the 6th grade and in a class at Osceola Middle for kids with autism. While he's 13 years old, his cognitive level is that of a 1st grader and his communication skills are that of a kindergartner. Deputy Darling's first contact with this child was in January of 2017. During January, the bus circle in front of the school, there were buses going in and out. And the child liked the sound of motors and engines, and so he was there at the bus circle. Deputy Darling had contact with him and learned then that the child had autism and escorted him to the behavioral specialist's office. There was really nothing more to that incident than what I've just described. But on March 27th, the child's mother, Megan Dowdy, and we've given you some documents. One of them is a transcript, and it identifies Megan Dowdy as the child's mother, and she has consented to us that she's okay with you all having her information. And in fact, anybody that wants to, she's willing to be interviewed, and we'll provide her contact information when I finish here. But Megan Dowdy contacted the school because her son was having a, quote, meltdown at home. And there was some allegation that during the January incident that Deputy Darling had inappropriately squeezed his arm and had placed him in some sort of a timeout room. That resulted in a meeting the next day on March 28th at the school between the principal, other school staff, and Deputy Darling. And it was determined that there was nothing inappropriately done by Deputy Darling or anybody else during the January incident. Megan said that she was satisfied with the outcome of that meeting. Then on May 4th, the child had a meltdown at school and turned over a desk in class. The child was suspended from the school for 1 day, but there was no interaction with Deputy Darling on the May 4th incident. On May 15th, Megan Dowdy, the child's mother, placed a recording device in his pants pocket. He was wearing cargo shorts, and she placed the recorder in the pocket of his shorts. The reason why she did that is that the child was regressing, having more and more meltdowns at home and in school, and she was concerned that something was happening at school that was causing him to regress, so he was having more of these meltdowns related to the autism. On the same day that she put the recorder in the child's pocket, May 15th, is that during his first period class at Osceola Middle School, the child began to act out. And he threw a book at the teacher. The teacher contacted the behavioral specialist. The behavioral specialist went to the classroom and called Deputy Darling to the classroom. As they removed the child from the classroom and walked to the behavioral specialist's office, it's captured on video during the walk in the hallway, and we'll show you the video here in a second. And while walking down the hall, there was also audio captured by the device that was in the child's pocket. And Deputy Darling began to yell at the child and told him to put his hands behind his back. And Deputy Darling had his handcuffs out and was spinning the handcuff, the ratchet on the handcuff. So he was taunting the kid and telling him that he had to put his hands behind his back and he was asking him, this is what you've been wanting, right? So there's this taunting as they're walking down the hallway. Deputy Darling told the child to stop that crap, quote unquote, and then said, now let me start throwing books at you. And he asks him, do you want me to throw these handcuffs on you as well? So he's doing that while they're walking, and he's taunting them by spinning the handcuffs. When they entered the behavioral specialist's office, Deputy Darling took somewhere between 3 and 5 books from a shelf and made the child stand there in the room with his hands out in front of him and the books in the hands. So he makes the kid stand there, puts the books in his hands, and has the kid there facing him. At that point, Deputy Darling began to challenge the child as he's standing there with these books in his hands to throw the books at him. And then when the child does begin to throw the books, then he commands him not to throw the books. Now remember that this kid is 13 years old, but he's got the cognitive ability of a first grader and the communication skills of a kindergartner. So Deputy Darling is sitting there taunting this kid with handcuffs, spinning him around, making threats to the kid, and forcing the kid to stand there with these books in his hand, and then telling the kid, throw the books, and then when the kid goes to throw the books, he says, don't throw the books. He also tells him to stop his, quote, crap, and tells the boy, again, that he's going to throw the books at him. And he told the child that he was going to put the handcuffs on, quote, real tight. He also told the child that he was not to put the books down until Deputy Darling allowed him to do so. Now, during the course of this, probably 5 minutes or so as he was holding the books, Darling continued to yell and berate the child and threatened him that he was going to take him into custody under the Baker Act. And he told this 13-year-old with autism, I need to take you to, quote, a mental hospital, and asked him, is that where you want to stay for the rest of your life? He told the boy that if he took him to the mental hospital, they would keep him forever. And if he throws books again, that he belongs in a mental hospital. Now, Darling eventually allowed the boy to put the books down and put them on a shelf. The child did calm down temporarily, but then became agitated again. And Deputy Darling said, I'm not fixing to play now, I'm fixing to get pissed off, quote unquote. So Deputy Darling was with the child for about 25 minutes before leaving, and then the child's mother came and picked him up. After getting the child home, Megan Dowdy listened to the recording and contacted the school board. The school board, after receiving the complaint, referred it over to us for investigation. We've got the video, we've got the audio. We'll play a short clip of it and then finish up with some more information and take any questions you have. So go ahead, Spencer. So that's Deputy Darling walking down to the classroom where he had thrown the books. That's the boy. Okay. Go ahead with the audio.
So what you're listening to right now is the Pinellas County Sheriff detailing what has happened and the reason why this school resource deputy has been fired. Part of it, and what it looks like to us at least, a boy with autism who is 13 years old but has the cognitive ability of a first grader. That's the person who he was doing all these things to.
And the sheriff laid out a number of disturbing allegations of this exchange between this boy and this deputy. Much more on what we just heard from the sheriff coming up new on ABC Action News.